All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the videos if you like them, share them far and wide. Of course, the best place to follow us right there is on Locals. peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, fast intro because there's a lot of video clips that I have to get through. All right, if you were a local supporter, I popped in last night. That's what I'm talking about. I'm going to be doing stuff like that. There's just too much going on. You could say what you want about a President Donald Trump or a President-elect Donald Trump for that matter, but he is nothing if not entertaining, right? It is super boring when you have a senile guy crapping his pants in the White House every day, day in and day out, and their only thing to talk about is how bad the jobs report is or something, right? This guy will keep you on your toes. He'll keep you busy. All right. So look, so I popped on last night to talk about Pete Hegseth because we have all these hearings that are flying at us. And every clip I choose, everything I want to talk about, I'm doing in the context of a few things, thinking about a few things. Number one, and maybe this is really number one. They're in no particular order, but I guess in my head, this is how I think about it. Number one, are Democrats asking questions, and are their strategies and their tactics indicating at all that they understand why they lost this election? Or perhaps maybe they see something that we don't see. So in 2016, 2017, for instance, all right, just give you an example. I did understand why they were directing their line of questioning to Jeff Sessions the way they did, or any of them. I mean, you can name it. Doesn't matter if it was the Secretary of Defense, if it was, Mike Pompeo later, or Secretary of State. It just didn't matter. You saw where they were going with this. They had this Russia thing cooked up, and they didn't understand something that I don't think MAGA understood. And we talked about it on the show. Yes, the American public voted for change, but they were going to make that change really messy, really volatile, and they were not sure, and they took a gamble, and they were right. Maybe they just knew that the American public was not ready for what that real change really looks like. And what does it look like? Institutions start to talk about how, they're going to crumble, the status quo is going to fall apart, everything's going to, we called it in 2020 the seasick voter. That's the person they were targeting. Somebody who, they like the idea, but they're not willing to deal with it. They're not willing to cope with it. It makes them anxious. It gives them anxiety. So even though they were like, God, Trump really did a good job on the economy, and I didn't get us any wars, I want to go back to Democrats because I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to be seasick all the time. And Trump was not very good at holding somebody's head while they puked off the side of the boat. All right. And then two. Well, first and foremost, a big deal. First is, do they get it? Like they kind of saw something in 16 and 17 after they lost that maybe a lot of people did not. Do they have that this time? And are they at all understanding why they lost the election? The answer is no to either angle. And I'm going to tell you why that is a little bit later. It's in the subheading of the banner. If you see it, it's because Democrats are not in the same position they were in after they lost in 2016. The Democratic donor base is in complete disarray. They're pissed. They're super furious. There are bundlers, Democratic bundlers, who don't feel they can ever work again because the Harris campaign lied to them. For all these people who think, they thought they were going to lose, they didn't tell them they were going to lose. They didn't tell the donors it was close. They told them that they were ahead. Go bundle money for Florida. All right. I mean, I don't know why people aren't reporting this stuff. Go bundle for Florida. Florida's going to be close. Folks, he stomped her into the ground in Florida. Once just not long ago, it was a razor-thin battleground state. Even against Joe Biden, he won it by less than 4 points. He stomped her double digits and won Miami-Dade by double digits. 6 points more than our poll suggested. And the Democratic donor base is in disarray. Their strategists are in disarray. They're not getting paid. I mean, it's just... they're trying to figure out something totally new, and bundlers who just bundled money for Kamala Harris are turning MAGA. Yes, that is happening. I'll read you a story if we have the time to. I don't know. We have a lot of clips, but I will read you that story. So they don't really know what direction. There's no strategy here, okay? There's no, I got this Russia card in my back pocket and I'm going to pull it. There's none of that this time. And it's resulting in Trump's nominees simply steamrolling the Democrats who look like total idiots. All right. The other thing that I'm looking at again is I mean, I'm comparing it to 2016, comparing it to 2017, and then I'm looking to see whether or not they understand anything about how to, why? Because why? Because they understood how to mount a good opposition to him in 2017, even before many of the rest of us did. They understood that. MAGA was too busy celebrating, oh, we won. And they realized, no, we have a little trick up our sleeve here. All right. Maybe I'll do it for locals either late. Oh, no, I can't do it later tonight because I have Sean Parnell, 5 p.m. Do not miss it. And then maybe I'll do it tomorrow. But there is some, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. There is, it's not new. All right. Like, it's being portrayed as if it's new. Several people heard about this audio surrounding the JFK assassination. Look, some of us knew about it. This is actually the first time I've technically heard it, but did know about it. Mark and Eric over at Unstructured know a lot about this topic. They did an entire documentary on it. Is very, very cool. And I think all of this is kind of wrapped up and connected because in 17, they knew they faced things like, oh my God, this guy could get into this place and spill all our secrets, right? Like, they had a way to stop that and distract him. I mean, really, that's what it amounted to, a major distraction. He can't tell the American public what happened with JFK. He can't tell the American public this or that because we're going to have him with his hands tied behind his back. We're going to have his hands full. The only thing they have is Jack Smith's stupid report that nobody gives a damn about. And that's not going to be some major bombshell that's going to stop the presses in D.C. Nobody cares. And there's a clip with an exchange with Pam Bondi that I'm going to show you. And it goes to, again, they think it does. I think this time they're wrong. And it's because they just are in such disarray that they don't understand how to move forward. And they're doing the best they can. Not that they don't think they have a plan. They do. It's just not the right one. It is nothing like 2017. All right. That's not that. Okay. Right. Before we get started on all of this, though, for those of you who have been watching Inside the Numbers for a long time or any number of my videos, Barnes and I had a conversation about this after the election in 2020. We talked about this. I told you a story about John Ratcliffe after Joe Biden was sworn in and the Trump administration left, going back to Texas. And what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to get anyone in trouble here. Being frustrated. Frustrated that as the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, he knew a lot about the Hunter Biden laptop. He knew a lot about Joe Biden and the Biden family in general's dirty dealings with China, Romania, Ukraine, right? And wanted to take a different tactic that was actually taken, which was Jared Kushner's idea. All right. It was Jared Kushner's advice to Donald Trump. Don't do that because if you do, they'll come at you. There are lines in D.C. Look what happened to my daddy, right? There are lines in D.C. and if you cross them, they will bury you. If you don't cross them, they understand you're somewhat playing ball and they'll leave you alone, Pops. So when you get out and you go back to Mar-a-Lago, they're going to leave you alone. And there were some people on the other side of that argument, like John, who was like, bullshit. They're going to destroy you because you already committed the cardinal sin against them, which is what? Be a member of the ruling class who decides, I think I'm going to look out for the little guy over the ruling class. That is a class betrayer. And for the ruling class, there is nothing more unforgivable than betraying your class, especially for the disgusting, unwashed masses who only count during like election time when you want their votes? How dare you? How dare you? And the Hunter Biden laptop thing just kind of went on. The New York Post during the election was censored for it. It wasn't until like 6 months after Joe Biden took office that people actually began to talk about it again. People like myself, Mark Mitchell, we actually polled the topic. And in a number of battleground states, you could actually see that there were enough people who were under a false impression that those stories were Russian propaganda, they were garbage, and that it might have changed their minds. It could have, even with everything else they threw at the man, it could have swayed their mind, and it could have swayed the election. And there's empirical evidence to argue that. So for those of you who heard me tell this story before, I'm going to play a clip because Ratcliffe addresses this situation, and I want you to kind of read between the lines. He's going to say a bunch of stuff, but I want you to read between the lines and imagine, like, as frustrated as you were over the last however many years, think about if you're John Ratcliffe. And you already know this guy's a crook. You're seriously concerned that China has a president in their back pocket. You know there's a laptop with his son getting cracked out with what appear to be underage Eastern European prostitutes. And the media is telling the country it's fake and it's Russian propaganda. Then imagine being John Ratcliffe and sitting through 4 years already knowing that it is like the worst possible scenario, worst case scenario. And it's a father who loves his son. And we don't mock the addiction shit on the show. We're not Sean Hannity. But it can be used against you. It's not a good place for a president to be in. And then he just takes everybody else to task for going along with it. Let's play John's show. Hold on, let me pull it up. There we go. Go, John. Phenomenal.
In 2020, when a chairman of an intelligence committee misrepresented that a laptop owned by then candidate Biden's son was somehow a Russian intelligence operation, and 51 former intelligence officials used the imprimatur of IC authority to go along with that, I stood in the breach. I stood alone and told the American people the truth about that. So I think my record in terms of speaking truth to power and defending the intelligence community and its good work is very clear. And what I can assure you is those types of instances, if I'm in that position as CIA director and have to do that again, as uncomfortable as that can be, to be accused, the truth will ultimately defend itself, and I think that intelligence will as well.
All right, so why is that just such an important clip? This man was the director of national intelligence. The intelligence community was running a scam on the American public, a total farce, and he knew it. And I mean, if it was up to him, he would have went further in all of this, but it wasn't up to him. So he did he did the best, well, not the best. He did good. Look, Ratcliffe is one of the good ones. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, or nothing. John Ratcliffe is one of the good ones. He told you the truth when you're, like he just said, in the guise of IC authority, this group, because I mean, you see a headline like that, 51 intelligence officials. How could they lie to us? But the American public is now past that. So it's almost impossible to imagine an exchange like that coming out so favorable to Donald Trump and one of his nominees back in 2017. For those of us who are around, And I know a lot of you, maybe you weren't, because a lot of people are new participants in this process. You've woken up like the last 4 years. Maybe you couldn't buy eggs. Maybe you couldn't buy gas. Maybe you couldn't pay your rent. You sure as hell couldn't pay your student loans if you're young. All right. You woke up and there's a lot of you and you came out of it and you said, whoa, 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 whoa. What the hell happened? How did this happen? And then you started to learn about this. Well, just if that's you and you were not around, believe me when I tell you that 2017 was way different. Trump's nominees were sitting there in the chair, cowering like babies, trying to give the polished, your usual nominee answers because they thought they were going to get the same treatment that other presidents' cabinet picks were afforded. And of course, that was never going to happen, but they were still living under that pretense. So Democrats beat them up day in and day out, day in and day out. I still will never forget Jeff Sessions. Little guy, not a big dude. Laura used to call him the Keebler Elf, right? Sitting, and not in a bad way, and in a very affectionate way. She thought he was adorable. Like, he's a cute little man, you know? Like, he's a cute little old man. He's a little Keebler Elf. Look how cute he is. Right? And he was sitting there, stunned that people that he had served in that chamber with were lobbing those kind of accusations against him. Were treating him in such an adversarial fashion. He was stunned. He put his beautiful family behind him. And in case you guys don't know, Jeff Sessions' family does not look like a bunch of like Southern white evangelicals from Alabama. You may be shocked to learn that. Of course, because the media makes narratives and they make generalities and they make, they make characters of people. And oftentimes, more than not, especially I found on the right, they don't fit that media character. And he's sitting there thinking, let me bring my beautiful family there. We have adoptions. We care about, the human condition. All those countless nights doing late votes with each other, shooting the you-know-what. How's your wife? How's my wife? And they treated him like he was a Russian agent. Either he was complicit or he himself, either he is like stupid and such a political hack that he's going to like turn a blind eye to Trump being an agent of Putin. Or worse, are you too, Jeff? Are you a Russian too, Jeff? I mean, it was awful. And he didn't know how to answer it. Did he get confirmed? Barely. Barely. The threat of Mike Pence coming in to cast a tie-breaking vote, as always, during that time period. This is not that show. Believe me. Look, I did the Pete Hegseth clips. I didn't want to bore locals again with them from today, although I don't know, I may do it. The general clip is just too much. If Elizabeth Warren thinks she's going to pretend that she knew he wasn't a general, she's never going to get away with it. She's forever going to be labeled the idiot who didn't know Pete Hegseth wasn't just like, I told you guys when they selected him and they're going on Twitter and they're like, oh, he's just TV hosts they didn't know his background. They were ill prepared. They really didn't know. All they knew were the smears. They threw the smears at him. And because they didn't lay glove on him, like I said last night. But I'm going to play first, let's read Philip's column and then we can all laugh. All right. Because I'm going to take my own opinion out of it. And I'm going to read something briefly from somebody who is a very straight he's a straight shooter down the middle on Real Clear Politics. And then I'm going to play something. And this is what you're going to remember from Pete. Like I told you that this is what you were going to remember from the vice presidential debate. Okay. Sharp as hell, JD Vance, Bugs Bunny, super funny, super confident, super smart compared to his adversary, who is an idiot, Elmer Fudd. I told you that's what everyone would remember as a meme leaving. I'm going to show you what people remember from Pete Hegseth in a little bit. But he's getting confirmed. That's it. The line in the sand was drawn at Pete Hegseth, and he's going to get confirmed. His performance yesterday was just too much. He may even get a Democratic vote, and if that turns out to be the case, the rest of them are going to be very difficult to stop. All right. So here's Philip Wegman's column at Real Clear Politics. And I think he starts off the column with there were just so many good moments during this. And he starts off the column with talking about Pete's experience, like that they wanted to focus on so much. TV broadcaster, he's a TV personality. Okay, well, as a TV personality, it may have prepared him for this exchange if he was only a TV personality, but he, of course, was not. So he steamrolled them. He came across looking like a bright guy. Democrats, a bright guy who was what's the word I'm looking for? He had humility, right? Nobody's perfect, right? He had humility, but he was smart. He looked competent. And Democrats, the way they acted, I swear they like flipped the tables with the 1980s, like Jimmy Swaggart evangelical generation or something, like the holier than thou. Nobody believes it. It's so off-putting. You know, you have Tim Kaine, who's like talking about when his daughter was born, you slept with another woman. It was awful. Tim Kaine, the very same man who accepted a nomination from Hillary Clinton. He cares about infidelity all of a sudden. It's so ludicrous and hypocritical. I mean, it's not even funny. He did fantastic. And you might have saw our good friend Sean Parnell sitting right behind him. A decade of live television sharpened Pete Hegseth so much that even Senate Democrats acknowledged his ability to mobilize the talking point during a confirmation hearing before the Armed Services Committee, marking another battle in an ongoing culture war. That's I see it Phil. I see it exactly the same way. They turned a hearing, okay, that's supposed to be about the Secretary of Defense, the biggest balloon bloated bureaucracy in the history of human civilization. It's supposed to be about the man and his resume who is going to lead that behemoth. And instead, they turned it into a culture war, and they went on the Jimmy Swaggart side. Is that their way of trying to respond to their loss in the latest culture war rounds? Like, because they lost this time badly. They may have milked the Dobbs stone or milked the Dobbs cow as much as they could milk it, but they lost, and they lost badly when it came to the actual election in 24. Nobody wanted to see women getting their face beat in. And by the way, we ran clips on Locals about this yesterday. Again, I mean, you're going to focus on like a woman's right to be on a Navy SEAL team or a Green Beret team. Let me drop a bomb right here, right now. Americans don't want women on ODAs. Okay. All right. I hate to tell the pollsters out there who don't know how to do their jobs year in, year out, election after election. Americans don't believe that is the best place for a woman to serve. Now, they do absolutely obviously have no, that doesn't mean you don't want women in the military. It just means most Americans don't want to see Green Beret standards reduced so a female can get through SFAS, because that is what's happening. It's happened. It's over already. And in fact, in truth, the 18 X-ray program that was implemented after 9/11, it lasted about a year and a half before they started to reduce those standards anyway. And then it was already something that a lot of people in the JFK special warfare community were already saying, look, this is not going to be good if we continue down this road. Then the Obama administration came. They decided to experiment like the Israelis already experimented, by the way, and threw it out. And it got even worse. So just because you don't want SFAS to be 14 days instead of 28 days, all right, and just because or even they reduced it to like 21 with SOP-C or something. If you don't want that, and if you don't want, the standards for BUDs, basic underwater demolitions, to be reduced, so it does not translate into you don't think women can serve in the military, it's not the same thing. Dropping a bomb on somebody's head from 3 miles up is not the same thing as being in an ODA and separated from a conventional unit for months on end. It's not the same thing. And they just don't understand the lines where the culture wars are. Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal said he would back Hegseth to be the next spokesperson for the Pentagon, assuring President-elect Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, quote, "I don't dispute your communication skills," unquote. Later, not halfway through the hearing, Hawaii Senator Mazie Hirono, what an idiot. I'm sorry. I have no respect for this woman. You know, if you missed it on Locals last night, you should go back and look at it. She is not a smart person. She is only a U.S. senator because she was in the right place at the right time in a state dominated by one party politic rule, or that has been dominated by one party politic rule. In the Trump era, Hawaii is actually getting redder. Nobody's paying attention to it, but it is. Mazie Hirono felt compelled to remind the quick-witted nominee, quote, "You are no longer on Fox and Friends," unquote. It just was so off-putting. And it was so red. It was so canned. And she barely could get it out. She couldn't even deliver that correct. The former Fox News host might as well have been. The cross-examination was little different than the heated debates over ideology, personal morality, and institutions that drive ratings on cable news. More pundit than politician, Hegseth was characteristically blunt with the mission Trump wants him to pursue if confirmed. Root anything woke out of the Pentagon and, quote, "restore a warrior culture to the Department of Defense," unquote. Unlike many of his predecessors, Hegseth is not a retired general or a seasoned government official, and he has comparatively limited executive experience. Well, guess what? As Senator Wicker said, which was hilarious, he's got more executive experience than anybody in that room. He is the most, again, I'll say this before I keep going on with his resume. The most disqualifying thing for a nominee to the Secretary of Defense is a disbelief in the principle of civilian control over the U.S. military. Our current Secretary of Defense, and one that Republicans even lined up to vote for, unbelievably, has throughout his life and career expressed openly and on multiple occasions that he does not believe that civilians should be in control of the U.S. military. That should terrify every single American, old and young, rich and poor, left or right, black and white. You feel me? That is the most terrifying thing you can ever hear a SecDef say. And again, think about the power this institution holds. All right, so unlike many of his predecessors, he's not a retired general or a seasoned government official, and he's comparatively limited executive experience. He's a combat veteran and television anchor with Ivy League degrees. But the former Army major's main qualification in the eyes of the incoming administration is the rejection of political correctness in the military. In Tuesday's committee hearing, he did not blink or abandon the views he has expressed for years in print and on air. He delivered a full-throated condemnation of the diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that were the hallmarks of the Biden Pentagon, DEI. This is not a time for equity, arguing instead for equality among the ranks. This is something that I think people get messed up. And Republicans, or I wouldn't even say that, I would say the right, the new right, is doing a better job making people understand. Equality and equity are not really the same things, okay? It's just not. Equality, he says, is the bedrock of our military, men and women, duty positions in uniform, black, white, doesn't matter. We treat you equally based on who you are in the image of God and as an individual. And we all get the same bad haircuts. You're not an individual. You're part of a group. Here is the problem, and anyone who's ever served in the military, can I get an amen on this? Here is the main problem with DEI in the military, or anything that is of their worldview being implemented in the military. It singles out somebody's identity. The military isn't an individual identity organization or institution. You are part of a machine. That machine matters more than you. So for you to say, We have to put women into Green Beret, into ODAs. We have to put women into Navy SEAL teams. We have to do this. And then you reduce standards. Then you do this, you do that. You're basically violating the entire principle of the entire damn thing. As Parnell and I have explained to many people over and over again, you're not that important. I'm sorry if your mother patted you on the ass and told you you were special. In the U.S. military, you are not unless you have a badge on your arm that says you are. And you have to earn it with the correct number of weeks in FSAS. For me to go out of my way to care about your feelings is going to hurt the entire thing. If I have to care about how many of this victim class is in this position, then there are going to be certain people who are imminently more qualified for that position who are not going to get it. And that is going to reduce the effectiveness of the entire damn thing. And then also, it's just a matter of mentality. It's not about you. It's about the person next to you. And I'm telling you, if you break that mindset, you break the entire thing. And it's sad because I'm from the North. I now live in the South. But I am telling you, when you're in the North, all you hear about is the South is this, it's a different culture, it's this and that. In the North, I'm not kidding. They're obsessed with these old race discussions. They're like obsessed with them, and they want to keep it alive because they want to feel better than the South. That's just the truth. They're more obsessed with the division and, the racial divide and all that the South is. Far more. You cannot tell me that's not true. So much so that when I went into the military, I was stunned with how equal everything really is. Because that's not what I expected. That's not what I heard. That's not how I was. That's not what I was led to believe by all the better people in the North. And Northerners out there, don't bull yourself. You know what I'm talking about. And it was nothing to my friends from Tennessee, my friends from Oklahoma, my friends from Arkansas, my friends from the Carolinas, my friends from Georgia. It was nothing to them. That's the military, bro. That's how it goes. We're all green. It was the most progressive institution, truly progressive, in the way that Thomas Jefferson used the word progressive. Not in the way they use it now. In the way Thomas Jefferson used the word progressive, it was the most truly progressive institution I had ever seen up until that point, and I have still yet to ever see in my entire life. Aside from maybe the environment over at my own company. Not to pat myself on the back. No, but I'm serious. I'm deadly serious. So there we have it. I don't want to continue on this forever. I just think that Philip absolutely did get it. If you read the rest of his column, you'll see he gets it. He said he did moderate on one front, which was that women will have access to combat roles. Look, but again, not every combat role is equal. And I'm not sure they pointed to an in-context quote where Pete was saying that there are no roles women can serve in. I've heard him make statements over the years over and over again. I just don't hear them in 15-second sound bites. Pete has never, in my knowledge, said, that he would, if they could make it and it wasn't, hurting standards or the quality and combat readiness of the group, then that's a different story. Like, just because you say they shouldn't be in buds or we shouldn't reduce standards in SFAS does not mean you don't think they could be a pilot in a combat role, that is a combat role, right? And there are others that are technically combat roles that are just not the same thing, right? And that is a very, very big about face in a very short period of time, Elizabeth Warren said. All right, so going on, Kirsten Gillibrand was clearly the one who did the most. Tammy Duckworth, of course, with her role, she was, of course, injured, so of course, that was something they should. Honestly, Kirsten Gillibrand should have shut the hell up. And if it was going to be more effective, just let Tammy Duckworth do that line of questioning. But they're all over the place and they don't get it. But I'm telling you, it was just too many absolutely stupid things. Americans are far more common sense than the liberals in DC. And they just don't seem to get that they lost this exchange and they lost it badly. Pete Hegseth is going to get confirmed. And that's it. I mean, live with it, like deal with it. All right. So this is what people are going to see. This is what this is going to be a problem to get some of these young voters back that they lost to Trump, unless Republicans just totally bite it, because this is the stuff they're going to say.
Hegseth, are you attracted to obese Hawaiian women with a below normal IQ?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, are you aware that I used the potty all by myself today?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, you seem to be pretty fertile. If confirmed, would you commit to putting a baby in me?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, are you saying under oath that you refuse to impregnate a portly Hawaiian retarded woman? Even
I'm sorry. That was everywhere. This is when you lose the meme war, or you at least, because Democrats aren't good at memeing, they got to get better at memeing. I'm serious. I did not discount the effectiveness of memeing for sure. I mean, all through the election, like the Dilly meme team is killing Ron DeSantis. They're killing him. They're going to kill Nikki Haley, and they did. And then once they turn their attention to Biden and then later Harris, they're going places that other surrogates cannot go. They will not go. I mean, for the love of God, folks, go look at the end of the Nikki Haley memes. Go look at the repeat end of the Dilly meme team's Nikki Haley memes. Okay. It's crude, but people love it. They love it. The few people who look at it and go, oh, that's over the line, I'm not going to vote for you anyway. Like, honestly, they're not. And if they were and you turned them off, I guarantee you got so many more Joe Rogan men that it just doesn't matter. Like, that's politics. It's a trade. You're looking at an equation, a coalition, an equation that is your coalition. And you're saying, if I remove a little bit of Y, how much more of X am I going to get, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the idea is to make a net gain. And these meme wars absolutely led to net gains. There's just no arguing that. There's not. So Democrats have to get better at it, or they're just going to be buried over and over and over. Because I'm telling you, they lost, and this is something we're going to keep hammering for a long time. They lost control of a certain group of young Americans who now vote. They lost control of them. For years, they dominated that space. Media and entertainment was the most influential thing on how they thought, and that is just not the case anymore. It's TikTok. It's podcasts like ours, and it's podcasts like Charlie Kirk's. It's like, that's where it's going. Nobody gives a damn what Taylor Swift thinks about politics. They're like, what a lovely song. Shut the hell up. Like, nobody cares. And that was never the case. You could have Beyonce come out and say, yeah, vote for my boy Obama. And they were like, all right. Like, no, not anymore. They don't care. And something happened, and they're going to have to dissect that, when I'm not going to do it for them. That's for damn sure. All right. So I'm saying, like, that's how it's going to go. Another one. And I know I'm like over the commercial limit here. Well, I'll take one in like 5. All right. There's some that are kind of long, and I need to be careful here and make sure I don't go on and on and on about it. Yeah. Okay. Right. I want to make sure I go in the right order, because there's obviously certain material that you can work with depending on the nominee. But the best and most effective messaging sticks to a common narrative, a common theme. So you can just keep hammering. And I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't throw a little bit more at Hegseth when it comes to this idea of an insurrection and, these threats to democracy, because of course it could be a threat, something that's a concern of the Defense Department. Clearly the Biden administration made it their concern, appropriately or not. But it is certainly the purview of the Department of Justice. They're the ones prosecuting and persecuting political prisoners and dissidents. So we would expect this out of the Pam Bondi hearing. And we did hear, by the way, even Kamala Harris, before they certified the electoral votes in the Senate, she did a video, which I think we played some of on the show, which she brought it up all over again. You see how fragile our democracy could be. Very clearly a reference to recently, because she did say just recently. In other words, January 6th, a reference to that. But they just kept going with it with Pam Bondi. Oh, and by the way, during that speech, she mentioned again this fake nonsense that there were police killed during January 6th. There were no police. No Capitol Police officers were killed on January 6th. Sure as hell were not killed by protesters. Only 2 people died that day, resulting from the events, if you can even say that. And according to Brian's family, he does not want the media to keep saying that. He had a heart attack. The other one, of course, was Ashley Babbitt, a veteran who was shot in the face when she was unarmed. Anyway, so I don't know. I mean, I do know what direction they could take, but they're staying this course. At least somewhere in their own minds, they're not ready to give up on the idea that they could win back this threat to democracy vote, which they lost. Incredible. Incredible. One of the most stunning things for pundits to digest about the 24 election. The other one probably is that Trump didn't lose the abortion voter all that much at all. He didn't. They just keep going on this. And the entire narrative, even the Georgia, there was questioning on the Georgia case. Who did it? Dick Durbin? I believe it was Dick Durbin. But before we get to that, oh no, this one's Dick too. Talking about the January 6th pardons. All right, let's do it. This is Pam Bondi, who, by the way, I went on John Fredericks the day after the John Fredericks show, the day after Pam Bondi was announced, because there were people who were like, oh, what a terrible pick. And it was like, what are you talking about? Just because she hasn't been visible on television does not mean she has not been a huge advocate. And I got to tell you, because I mean, Pam was the attorney general of my state, and huge on election fraud. I mean, she had these people thinking that there were like undercover Pam Bondi agents in their offices watching over their shoulders to see if like Broward County or Palm Beach were going to count fake absentee ballots. Like she had these people shook, at least later. But in any event, when the Russiagate hoax happened, which is what I talked with John about, at first she was like, I've heard of Bob Mueller, much like Newt Gingrich, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll see. But I'm not really sure this is like, there was enough evidence to start this investigation. She was always very critical of it. I don't know what the pretext here is. This seems like, this seems political, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, she was among the first people to immediately call out that investigation with Weissman. As soon as like Weissman was announced as number 2 is when her eyebrow went up. Like this is you cannot publicly make statements, even with Bob Mueller, who at that time still had a good reputation. You cannot go out and make public statements when he chooses Andrew Weissman as his number 2. And as it turns out, Bob Mueller was serving in very much the same role like Joe Biden. Bob Mueller couldn't even put a sentence together. And I don't know what Newt was talking about anyway. Robert Mueller has always been a piece of shit. Sorry. It's like Whitey Bulger never happened or something. I didn't know you could allow people to rot in jail to cover for your own crooked FBI agent and then still be considered a good person or an ethical person. The FBI was dirty. Bob Mueller was like, he played a key role in trying to I don't even want to say cover it up. It's not even covering it up. I don't really see the difference between any of them. John, who actually went to jail for that, knowing, being friends with the Bulgers, knowing them at least. I don't really see the difference in any of them. They're all a bunch of crooks. I don't know why anyone took it. But anyway, here we are. And by the way, for people who don't know, Pam Bondi was running all over the place, especially in the state of Pennsylvania, trying to get every vote for Donald Trump. So, like, she just wasn't visible. And I think because she wasn't visible, no longer on Fox every day like she was at one point, I think people just kind of forgot about who she was. But anyway, she got her turn in the hot seat. And I think she just humiliated Dick Durbin. She humiliated Sheldon Whitehouse. We're not going to play every one of those clips. But again, as we're doing it, every time you watch these hearings, all right, hat tip to C-SPAN. They're always the best for this. And I always snag clips from C-SPAN. Anytime you're watching these confirmations, you have to remember they're a show. And they just happened after an election. And which side is still speaking to the issues that drove the outcome of the election? And that typically will decide whether or not somebody does get confirmed. And only in the Trump era, by the way, are there this many questions surrounding confirmations. Presidents get their cabinets. It is very rare for a presidential nominee to be derailed the way that Democrats have always tried to derail Donald Trump's nominees. And that's not because of their qualifications. That's not because of anything they've ever said. It's not because of anything they've ever done. It's because Donald Trump is a threat to Washington, D.C., pure and simple. Pure and simple. And if Barack Obama was a threat to Washington, D.C., his nominees would have been, they would have tried to attempt to sabotage and assassinate, maybe not, their nominees too, but his nominees too. But because he wasn't, and he was a ball player, and he wasn't, there was no hope Obama was going to change anything. So he got everybody he wanted. And it's just the way the game works, folks. It's the way the game works. Although once upon a time, before I play this clip, you can go to peoplespunditdaily.com and type in Democrats confirmations, and you will see the history of confirmation battles, especially surrounding the Supreme Court. And you will see that Democrats began this now borking, of people, if you want to call it that. Whatever you want to call them. People refer to it as borking because of Robert Bork. All right, let's do this. Here is the J6 clip, okay? And we talked about this on Monday with JD Vance. So, of course, they're going to bring this up, right? I just don't understand how they think this is so potent of an issue for them. They're not polling this, like their pollsters just are horrible, or did they lie to them? I mean, are they David Pluffing them? Like, what is going on here? Don't pluff, bro. Don't pluff, bro. Why does this happen every time? StreamYard. Get this.
Do you believe that the January 6 rioters who've been convicted of violent assaults on police officers should be pardoned?
Senator, if confirmed as Attorney General of the United States, the pardons, of course, fall under the president. But if asked to look at those cases, I will look at each case and advise on a case-by-case basis, just as I did my entire career as a prosecutor.
Okay, let me stop it right there. That is the correct answer, okay? Whether that's the answer, there's obviously going to be hardline Trump supporters out there, and I don't even use that word hardline. Look, when it comes to this whole entire thing, if you didn't hear my rant on Monday, I'm 100% with you on this. You cannot have people tried in a kangaroo system like that, and I don't give a damn what they did. At that point, you throw it all out. It's all fruit from the poisonous tree, because you did not conduct yourself in a manner that is becoming of what our justice system is supposed to be in this country. All right. And a resurrected John Adams would assuredly agree with that. I mean, he wrote on this quite a bit. You cannot have the system itself be corrupt. It doesn't matter. Any conviction that follows isn't in itself it's not credible. It's not valid. So I would rather let people who actually did something wrong get a pass then basically condone the misuse of police state power. So I understand that. That's where I am personally on this. But you have to give the right answer. That is the correct answer. All right. So that's it. And Julie Kelly, by the way, who's done a lot with J6. I'm not sure there's anybody who's done more. I mean, you have lawyers, of course, that defended a lot of J6 people, but I'm talking about people who have used their influence, their social media status, their whatever it is, to shine light on the proceedings and how they were mishandled is a better word. I don't know that anybody has done more than Julie Kelly. And that was exactly what she thought too. You have to give this kind of an answer. Now, albeit if it was me, I'd probably give this answer and then promptly go to the White House and tell Donald Trump to pardon every single one of them because the office is corrupt. That's it. Look at him.
You
He don't know
also
what to
advise
say.
the president on pardons as part of your responsibility as Attorney General. And so I'm asking you, do you believe that those who've been convicted of the January 6th riot, violent
He's
assaults
just
on
gonna
our
repeat
police
himself.
officers should be pardoned?
That's all he can
That's
do.
a simple question.
So, Senator, I have not seen any of those files, of course. If confirmed and if asked to advise the president, I will look at each and every file. But let
Yep.
me be very clear in speaking to you. I condemn any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country.
Do you
I mean, that's it. That's what and all he can do is repeat himself because she already answered that question. It's like they set up all these gotchas and they're not even well thought out. They're not even gotchas, and they're based on issues that the American public sees as very gray. So they're just not landing on any of these people. She was already going to be one of the tougher ones to stop. But that was smart by Donald Trump to do that. And I know everybody wanted Matt Gaetz. I get that, like everyone is a Trump supporter, of course, wanted Matt Gaetz. But let's be honest, guys, that was not going to happen. That's cover, So you put somebody like Pam Bondi, who is a flamethrower. She is. You'll see. You put somebody like Pam Bondi there, who they're going to have a difficult time tackling. And it's going to be the issue that they have the most, they think anyway, they have the most ammunition with. And then the rest of them, obviously, are going to be distracted with trying to stop other more controversial nominations, like Hegseth, like Kennedy, I don't know, Ratcliffe. When did he get controversial? I guess when he told the country that those 51 intelligence officers are liars. I guess that's when he became controversial. But yeah, there's that. And look, the Department of Justice is also going to handle anything that's law enforcement related. And, we can get into this when we get into the Department of Homeland Security hearing. But obviously, immigration was a huge issue in this election. And they're going to bring it up if they're on the Republican side. And they did. And this is like why no soundbite among, let me put this. Okay. When you ask voters, what issues do you care about the most? It was cost of living and inflation, followed by like the economy in general, and then immigration. And immigration and the economy in general were always like hand in hand. Abortion, threats to democracy, they would like battle out for fourth place, right? But because the threats to democracy was very gray. So it's difficult to pin one of these nominees down on your version of that when you just lost the argument. Am I like explaining this correctly? I hope I am. I'm trying to do my best here on trying to explain how difficult of a task Democrats have to keep their people in line, because they have at least one who's willing to break with the fold so far. It just sees the handwriting on the wall. That's what it comes to. It's what it comes down to. And on the immigration, it was obviously a chance for Republicans to get their zingers. But I should stop and take a break real quick. And I think I'm going to do that. All right. So give me a second here. Let me take a break. Yeah. It is 12:56. All right. Don't forget, 5 p.m. I got to remember my little announcement thing here. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have Parnell on. We're going to go on Parnell's. I'm not going to have Parnell on. We're going to go on Battleground Live with Parnell. We're going to talk more about all of this, especially the Hegseth nomination, which I ran through some clips of. We're going to go through some other ones. It's part of the reason why I didn't want to beat you guys up with Hegseth clips, because we'll just wind up regurgitating a lot of it from what we have planned later tonight. But also, we're going to talk about how something I'm trying to explain to you here. Their best hope to land a punch and to derail more nominees was to have a successful committee hearing against Pete Hegseth. Their best hope was to land some kind of a blow on Hegseth that was going to lead to this like snowball effect of questioning all of these nominees. And when Hegseth held up, it was not good for the prospects of stopping any more of these nominees. And in fact, he goes up there. He's one of the most controversial ones. The media did everything in their power to kill him. Character assassination, sorry. They did everything in their power to do it. And he came out looking like like a champ. So it was actually like a worst case scenario for them. It's not just a normal backfire. All right, let's take a quick break though. And when we come back, we'll roll through some more clips of Bondi. And oh yeah, where's my Rubio one? Oh man, I gotta load that up in a second. Because it's so indicative. This clip I got of Rubio, I'm listening to Marco, and I'm remembering when Marco ran for the Senate, and I know I'm dipping into the time here. I'll take I don't yell at me. I'm about to do it. I'm remembering when he ran for the Senate and Chris Krispy Kreme was running, and he was a former governor, and he put himself out there as a Tea Party conservative, even though he refused to fill out the interview sheet for the Florida Tea Party groups that were running around. And eventually he did. He had an advisor, and she was a nasty woman. All right. And eventually she realized, you know what? You're not going to be handed this. You have to work for it. And he did. But then he goes to the Senate, and he just acts like a typical neocon. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I know I am, but this hearing, and you expected a polished Rubio. He knows what he's doing. But this hearing, I'm listening to it, guys, and I'm like, this guy, this is just not 2016 or 2017 anymore. This guy, whether these people are being legit or not, this guy is in a significantly more, it's dominant. The word is, he is in a dominant position over the party in the direction of the Republican Party. And if Marco Rubio is bending on several things, and then I will give you a little inside story about how something went down. Someone like a Marco Rubio is coming around. It's like, what the hell is next? All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk more about that. All right, TWC. That's exactly what I was just talking about. But what could they do? As the countdown for the new administration comes, most people know that a large sum of people's health was negatively impacted by this global coercion. I just talked to a friend in Britain the other day. They're talking about this new flu from China, thinking about locking it down. Well, I don't know about how easy that's going to be in America again, right? Because everyone's dealing with these side effects. They're experiencing long COVID. Right? Well, this is why they're introducing the 3-in-1 Ultimate Spike Detox, conveniently consolidated into one capsule with 4 times the nattokinase, 500 milligrams of bromelain, 500 milligrams of turmeric root extract. Nattokinase is an enzyme. It's research for anti-clotting effects and breaks down spike proteins, right? So combined with bromelain and curcumin, it provides a potent blend for detoxification and cellular support. It's 100% natural ingredients. Ultimate Spike Detox is backed by research, offering effective support for your cells' natural repair and recovery. It's the only formula approved and used by Dr. Peter McCullough, who is, of course, the top freedom-fighting doctor who risked it all to fight COVID tyranny. Head to twc.health/ there he is, TPP for the People's Pundit. That's what it's for. twc.health/ TPP to get yourself free shipping and a discount. Link is in the description. As always, we love our friends over at The Wellness Company. While you're at it, that code absolutely still does work for the emergency kits. They now have different ones, even for kids, right? If you haven't gotten the one with the nebulizer yet, go get it. The code will still work for that as well. Same link in the description. Definitely check it out. All right. I want to go back to it. I want to jump to Rubio. Not yet. Let's hold off on Marco Rubio. Yeah, I just feel like there are these nominees that everyone that's coming now, guys, has the resume, including Pam Bondi. They have the resume to back it. RFK, of course, but from what I understand, he actually did come across better. You had some problems with Gabbard, right? But for the most part, that's why the Hegseth nomination was so important, because it was going to be followed by people who really have Loctite resumes like Bondi. And let me just actually go back real quick to something Philip wrote. He writes, before I play this next clip, while Hegseth did not dispute that he lacks the resume to oversee such a massive bureaucracy, his nomination comes at as a moment of decreased trust in institutions across the board and in the military specifically. It is January. Typically, we do it in the spring, but we're coming up as well on our trust in institutions index, which will do what, like, very much in the mold of what Gallup has done or did do over the years. They still do it, but I don't know. It's just not they're not what it used to be. And they'll do police in general, the FBI, right? Department of Justice. We do CIA, the CDC, right? So this is a big, I'm pointing this out because this is a big difference. When we got to the Biden administration and we did that index, you could still see, of course, trust fell, especially in the FBI, in the office of the president itself, basically everywhere. But there was still there was a bottom that hadn't fallen out yet, and it would be infinitely harder to get somebody like Pete Hegseth nominated, and others that he's got coming, if that distrust wasn't there. And I think, this is, Wegman talks about the World War II era, right? And how this institution has changed since then. And, that was a period where people, as Larry Spriker wrote in his book, where people did listen, they did trust these agencies. And this is just a unique time. And if he doesn't blow it, and I'm not saying that to be a Debbie Downer, I'm just saying, like, if Trump doesn't blow it, there are two things he can really do here. One is effectively take it all back. It needs to, not all of it, but a lot of it. It needs to be taken back. It's over the line. The power is over the line, and they are out of control. And then secondly is, if they do, maybe instill more trust in these institutions. I think it comes down to Americans have to see some sort of accountability. You cannot start all of these endless wars, kill all of these innocent people, waste all of this money, and then not suffer some kind of a reckoning. Like, that is what Americans are looking for. They're looking for some level of accountability. And I don't think that the trust levels going to reverse, like Philip's talking about. That's not going to happen until they see some sort of accountability, which they will view as progress. At that point, you can't progress. At this point, not that point. I mean, we have hit that point. You cannot progress. You cannot move forward. You're not going to be competent at even what the mission of the institution is. You're not going to do it without the full support and the consent of the sovereign, which in this country, again, is the voter. You're not going to be able to govern effectively. You're not going to be a credible regime until you have that consent, and you're not getting it until you have some kind of accountability for how badly you failed. And that's it. Otherwise, you will end up like Trudeau's government. You will end up like so many others that we have seen, that once you lose that credibility, it's gone. So again, now would be the time to do it, because I don't know. A Democrat could win 4 years from now, and we'll just head down the same trajectory, which is regime instability. And that's it. So it's a small window here. It's a short window. All right. And it's because of things like this. The hell is the Department of Homeland Security is instituted after 9/11 to make sure that there's no easy way for some terrorists to get into the country, to make and blow something up, to make sure that there's no easy way for a terrorist to get on a plane, right, and do something again like they did in 9/11. And they just fail at everything. They don't stop terrorism. They don't. The FBI has not a single case that they could point to. They're too busy going after political opponents for their preferred party. And on the issue of immigration, which was a huge issue in the election, there are these human tragedy stories, one after the other. What a key moment when Joe Biden could not even say her name during the State of the Union. He didn't even know who she was. And he tried, but he said her name incorrectly. It was like a moment akin to George Bush looking at his watch during the debate against Bill Clinton. Like he couldn't care less. Couldn't even care less to learn Lincoln's name. He couldn't even care less. He had better things to do. Such a disconnect. Anyway, here we go.
Riley would be alive today
Oof.
if President Biden and Vice President Harris had enforced the law.
All right, so John Cornyn, who is on the shit list. Let's get real. Let's just be real. He is. He is a senator from Texas. He did not want to back any alternative. He himself wanted to be the Senate Majority Leader. He's booed off his own stage by his own party members a year back, a little bit more than a year back. If he was primaried against somebody like Ken Paxton, he would get destroyed, and that is probably likely to happen. And yet he's going to take his time to try to get his sound bites, like all of these lawmakers do. But even, I got to be honest, I didn't expect him to say something like this. Maybe everybody, including people like John Cornyn, are starting on the Republican side to know what time it is. I'm not saying they're going to use it wisely. I'm just saying that they know what it is, and they're going to try to do their best to survive this time. I don't know that he can, but they'll try their best. I was even surprised to hear him say something so direct. I mean, it's not normal rhetoric for John Cornyn. Would she still be alive if Donald Trump was the president? Would she still be alive?
Secured the border.
Senator, he should not have been in our country. And then Laken Riley would have been alive. And I don't think it's just Laken Riley. There are so many victims throughout our country. Not only that, we're all familiar with the violent gangs who are coming into our country, walking into our country freely through the open border.
Wait, before she continues. So that was smart because Laken Riley, of course, is a symbol of what had been going on, what is going on. She is sure as hell not alone. And if you're, a member, look, I'm sure there are people listening right now who have a story or know someone who has a story. We have an elected official around here. We know a very, very nice woman. I mean, her son was 19 years old, just college. Like the seizures of fentanyl at the southern border, when you let all these people come in, of course, the fentanyl is going to come in with it at much higher levels than it was coming in under Donald Trump, much more sophisticated. And I'm not at all condoning what the kid did, but he's a 19-year-old kid who goes out with his friends in between semesters to, go out and have fun, thinks he's taking a Percocet, drops dead, dies because, of course, it's fentanyl and he has no tolerance whatsoever. So it's so much more than that. And it's good that she brought that up because Laken's the symbol of it. But again, why am I playing this? Because immigration was a huge issue during the election. And who's landing the blows here? Is it the Senate Democrats or is it the Senate Republicans and their nominees? I mean, I think this is like not even close. And it's so very different. It's just, to me, it just feels like Republicans are in control. And astoundingly, this is something to remember. Astoundingly, in 2017, they had bigger majorities. By sheer numbers, just numbers alone, they had more control. And yet Democrats were much more effective at grinding the agenda to a halt. Or at least limiting the damage they could do. They didn't get to immigration as a legislative achievement. He did a lot by executive order and by reappropriating funds, but they didn't get to that. They did deregulation. They did tax cuts. They failed at Obamacare. It was pathetic. Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy lied to Donald Trump and said, just get this CR done, or it was an omnibus actually back then. Just sign it, even though because he wanted to veto it. Just sign it. And when we come back from campaigning, we got the midterms everyone's worried about. When we come back from campaigning, we will get you your immigration bill. They did not. The FAIR Act did not pass. Perdue and Cotton put up the FAIR Act, which, by the way, addresses the real issue of immigration, which is the chain and the visa. But the chain is where the numbers are. It was just out of control. It was chaos. Here it feels like Republicans are in control of the issues that won them the election, and they're able to leverage it more with less numbers. At least so far. Because this is the first fight. The fights are the nominations. And then we'll get into the agenda. But we're not there yet. You got to get these people in before you can effectively get through the agenda. And in 2017, it was like very, very clear that it was going to be a rough road.
Cartels, the gangs, Venezuela's, let people out of their prisons. It's been reported. I don't have the security clearance yet to see what's happening, but I know, we all know, there are criminals throughout our country, and it is my commitment to you on both sides of the aisle that I will do everything in my power with the agencies that fall under me if I am confirmed to make America safe again. We have to do that, Senator.
All right, so I thought she was going to say something else here when I first watched it, to be honest. I thought she was going to go a little bit further there, and I'll do it now. I mean, it just would have been too much of a dance for her to do, so I guess she probably took the smarter tactic. But I think I know what Pam wanted to say right there. I do. Forget about criminals in the country. Pam, there are criminals sitting across from you. There are people influenced by the cartels that are sitting right 20 feet away from you. Everybody knows it. It's not a secret. But immigration was a massive issue. It clearly swayed votes, and Democrats can't touch it. They can't. The only thing they can say is that Donald Trump told you all to kill a bill that President Joe Biden put forward, but it's a bill everybody understood was not going to fix the issue. Everybody knew that. I mean, it was popular in principle, but when you get, or I would say it was popular on the surface, but when you get down into what the bill did, it was not at all popular. That's not what Americans wanted addressed. It's not. It would not have stopped, by the way. It would not have stopped the perpetrator in that specific case, let alone the other ones that she wanted to make sure everyone knew. All right, here's some good back and forth. Wait a minute. Let me just, yeah, I did miss that yesterday. All right, so Scott, this is actually the debate. I just saw this out of the corner of my eye because I think personally, Tulsi would be the one who would have had the hardest time after Hegseth, of course. But that's why it's so important to get these going first, so you can get some of your controversial ones in, because this is how the nomination process works. You have some people who are controversial. If they go and they face the hearing and they face the committee and they equip themselves well, and they, come out looking like they're sharp and the president's judgment is not in doubt, it becomes more and more difficult to oppose them. Right? So you want to keep somebody like a Gabbard for later, right? You just want to. This would depend on the cooperation of the Senate. I mean, really, you would need them to be all right with things like recess appointments. But at this point, Scott, I mean, it feels like to me they're in on this because part of this is political. It's not just about procedure or what's allowed. A lot of it is political. And because they started this process, maybe I could be wrong, because maybe it would make it easier for him to do that with somebody like Gabbard, because, they had their say, they had their hearings on others. And now it's just like, oh, right, we didn't get to that one, but we're going to appoint this one for now until it's time. I mean, I don't see it that way. I think you gotta take it head on. I really do. And plus, do you really want, like, if you're Donald Trump and you're thinking, if I got to go a different way here, which he didn't, right? I mean, that time is kind of through. He didn't. You don't want to set that precedent, and then Democrats are they're going to do it anyway. I see your point. I mean, they're going to do it anyway. They're going to do whatever they want to do. So I just don't know if you want to be the first one to do that or start doing that. I don't know. We'll see. Don't let me forget to read that along with the Rubio clip. All right. I have something I want to read with Rubio's clip because I think it's more upfront and honest than the one than the clip. So I mean, technically the answer is yeah, Scotty can do it, but I don't. There's political considerations there too, and I don't know if that's the smartest way. I think the smartest way is to make them take these people on, have them do what they should be able to do. I mean, that's why I'm kind of picking these clips, because they have the issues on their side. Even Tulsi, what are they going to do? Call her a Russian agent again? I mean, I almost dare them to. Because Americans are just going to have they're going to just vomit that shit out, man. I mean, they're over that stuff. No one's going to believe Tulsi Gabbard was a Russian agent who worked against Hillary Clinton. No one's going to believe it. Just like nobody cares every time Sheldon Whitehouse brings up the J6ers or Dick Durbin brings up the J6ers. Or like in this case, by the way, we're going to look at Durbin with Bondi talking about the freaking call in Georgia. Let them do this, and it'll be that much easier on the more difficult nominees, because this is a woman who destroyed Kamala Harris's first run for president. You don't think she can take on these people? I think she'll do just fine. I really do. And once you get a lot of these in the bag, and then the process steamrolls. It really does work that way. It becomes very difficult for you to oppose a president's choice when they have several others have already demonstrated that his judgment is sound. And that's what this is really all about. Making sure that the president made the right, didn't make a bad judgment call, and that they are qualified to do it. And there really is no other standard. It's more like, is there anything that disqualifies them from doing it? Because the president is afforded his cabinet, or hers, when that time comes. All right. And again, so we go from immigration back to this, and it's just so awful. Back and forth. Back and forth, back and forth. Oh, yeah, this one I grabbed, right? Yeah, this is Fox and Friends.
He said to the Georgia Secretary of State, find 11,780 votes.
Do you have the entire context of that call? I feel like it was much longer than that, and may have been taken out of context.
It was an hour long. And
right.
You can certainly listen to it. I hope you will.
What an idiot. I feel like there was more conversation than that. Of course there was. That wasn't the entire call. Can you find 11? That is for, I know people who are on that call. We've had somebody who was on that call on the show. Patrick, of course, was right there. Barnes flew down there to deal with that situation and then left when there were people who just were not giving the appropriate help that they needed. But what Donald Trump was saying, of course, was not find me some votes. The topic of the conversation were, of course, signatures do not match. And are there not 12,000 or 11,000 and change votes with signatures that do not match? And of course, there were. Folks, for those of you who don't realize how this stuff works, this is why I want fingerprint verification. I mean, if we can use our fingerprint to verify it's our phone and open our phone, or facial recognition to open our phone or a laptop, I have to do it every day right here when my screen goes off. I have to take this here finger and I need to put it on this here button on my keyboard for the Mac to open. It's not too much to ask to fingerprint verify whether or not somebody is legitimately casting an absentee ballot. Otherwise, we have to rely on people who have very different standards depending on the state. Some don't even have signature verification, right? During that election. I mean, it's a witness system in Virginia. It's ridiculous. It's widely supported by everybody. I'm going off on a separate thing here, but when the Atlanta Journal-Constitution printed up those ballots, when other people, third-party people like Barnes and myself, looked at the images of those ballots, even on a limited basis, because of course they did not fully release, as Raffensperger said he would, the images associated with each ballot. They did not. There were all types of discrepancies. I know once upon a time, we were not allowed to say this on YouTube. Now that those days are over, all caps is not a legitimate signature. And I keep, for those of you who've heard me and Barnes talk about this before, it's because the first one that I looked at was an all cap signature, meaning they wrote not in cursive, they wrote in all caps, and it was verified. Boom, done. Others clearly were the same person writing the same damn thing. Others were chicken scratch that was not even close to legible, or what had been on file. Like, so we're relying on this, and we can get rid of all of this. We can get rid of all this doubt by simply just using fingerprint verification. Or again, now we're even further along that we could do like a facial recognition app. It's not hard, guys. It's not hard. The most advanced country in the world, supposedly, and we're doing chicken scratch in all caps on our ballots. So at that point, everyone had known that it was the signatures, even though it was still early in the process. Everybody knew that the real problem would be found with the signatures, which is why Kemp and Raffensperger's office did not want to release them. As it turns out, Kemp's right-hand man, a never Trumper, by the way, had somebody vote absentee on his voter record. Come on. And Trump was talking about, you're telling me there's not, 11,000 and change of those votes? He didn't say go out and find those votes. And that is the centerpiece, one of the centerpieces of the Georgia case, which of course also will fail and failing. Which is why, by the way, you should not put up a GoFundMe or Go Send Go promising if you give me $250,000, which he raised, that you would fight this lawfare tooth and nail and then cop a plea agreeing to testify against co-defendants so you can keep your law license, which it looks like you're not going to keep anyway. Should have waited. Should have fought. Should have fought harder. Now look at you. Doesn't even matter what happens to that case. You've already given yourself a stain. All right, last one with Pam Bondi. Then I want to get on to Rubio because Rubio is one that is obviously one of the easier ones. I think Bondi also is one of the easier ones, except for the fact that they're safeguarding that post. They're trying to safeguard who gets into that position. Even Jeff Sessions, they didn't trust with that position. And they derailed him as quick as they could when it came. They attached the Russia case to him, so he would be forced. And he was forced politically. He should never have done it. There was no reason for him to recuse himself. Should never have let Rosenstein take the wheel of that case. But they were able to do that. They have nothing like that on Pam Bondi. So this is going to be a much tougher time. But even still, they knew they had something on Sessions. They knew they could bully him to step aside and let the wolves through the door, basically. And they still treated him the way they treated him. And he barely got through. I keep making these comparisons because it's so important for you to remember how very different this is from 2017. This is so very different. And if you're a Trump supporter, it's a very good sign. It's a good sign. All right, it's good.
Said that Department of Justice prosecutors will be prosecuted in the Trump administration. What Department of Justice prosecutors will be prosecuted and why?
I said that on TV. I said prosecutors will be prosecuted to finish the quote, if bad. Investigators will be investigated. We all take an oath, Senator, to uphold the law. None of us are above the law.
She's doing fantastic. I mean, I don't know what the hell else to say here. Why did anybody doubt her? Laura, call John Fredericks. We told people, there were people who were legitimately like, she's not going to be able to get through this hearing. And John Fredericks are like, what the hell are you talking about? It's Pam Bondi. She's going to get up there and rock it. What are you talking about? I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. Stigma with blondes or something. I don't know what they thought was going to happen here. I'm supposed to be taking a break here. I'm just going to let the rest of this clip roll. But I mean, he just made a fool of himself. I don't know. Again, I know it's 127, 128. It just turned. How much time we're going to have left here? I really feel like we need to save some time to discuss the situation with Democrats more, because I don't think they're aides. Usually these guys are good. They're in that office. They're, scrounging up stuff that they can ask. They figure out even good ways, like when they're taking you out of context, to keep you out of context, right? So Adam Schiff was a good example of this. Scumbag of the earth, no doubt. But he was very good, and his staff was very good at taking you out of context and then keeping you out of context. And then it would hurt. It would hurt your confirmation. It would hurt your testimony, whatever. They're not even doing this well anymore. And I feel like it's because from the very top of the structure, when you're talking about who's at that top, it's the Democratic donor base. They are at the top, and the administrative state basically understands that they run at their behest. Anytime they need a check, they get a blank check. Like, that is a problem for them right now. And I feel like they're just not getting the best people in the world to help them. And they're like, everyone's kind of scrambling and not doing what they normally do well, even decent, even enough to just get by. They're actually hurting themselves, right? So this exchange continues, and it's just bad. It's bad for White House. Now, he's not one of the brightest guys in the world, but it gets worse. So what he comes across, and I'm going to say this before I roll the thing, and then I'm going to go get this other. We need to talk about this. I'll speed through Rubio after this clip. No, I won't speed through him, but I'm going to leave enough time, because I feel like they're coming across as people who just don't believe in accountability at all. And normally the right will argue that with Democrats, but they get away with it. They weasel out of it. They're not weaseling out of it this time. They don't have like a plan B. They're just throwing shit against the wall. Pardon my French. They're just throwing shit against the wall to see what sticks, and it's not sticking. And they're not able to have these great verbal dances. I think another part of it too is that the media is trying to figure its own shit out. So they're not there to just carry water. Like, think about how different it is in the example of Adam Schiff we just used. Think about during the impeachment. Adam Schiff fabricated a transcript. Republicans couldn't even get 2 words out to say, that's not real. You just read something that's made up. And then, by the way, you have the New York Times helping them, editing 500 words out of a transcript between 2 sentences to make what Adam Schiff said sound like the truth. You're not really seeing that from the media right now. I mean, they're always going to carry water, but you're really not seeing them go above and beyond. And it just feels like that coordination, that incestuous relationship that the media has with the Democratic Party, it feels like to me that they're like they're having a lover's quarrel, and they're not talking to each other the way that they talk. They're not effectively communicating as they typically do. And it's showing, and it's just at this point hurting them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So there it is. Let's go. Yeah. I mean, look out the window. Right. What do you see? Right. That's not like, I feel like they're not getting that right now. They're not able to do that, and that's it. I mean, that's it. Hell, everywhere they look, it's like the people are trying to hold them accountable. And what are they going to do? Argue, from freaking wildfires in California, to Washington, D.C. And their argument is what? It's wrong to say you're going to hold people accountable when they do something wrong. So the people in the Justice Department are just above the law? Like, that's your argument, Sheldon? Sheldon. What a name.
Let me give you a really good example of a bad lawyer within the Justice Department, a guy named Klein Smith, who altered a FISA warrant, one of the most important things we can do in this country. So will everyone be held to an equal, fair system of justice if I am the next Attorney General? Absolutely. And no one is above the law.
Like, what's he going to say to that? What's he going to say to that? Well, that's not good. We can submit fraudulent and altered FISA warrant applications? What? There's no answer to that. That was right. I just looked at comment. That was low-hanging fruit. It's almost like they're so unprepared. They're setting up pitches to knock out of the park. You know, I mean, what are they doing? Oh, and by the way, Derek, that's a good question. Do I think if Paxton runs against Cornyn, will he quit? That's a good question, Derek. I think, look, and no disrespect to you here, Pam, I'll get back to you in a second here. I saw that too. I was looking at the comments. That's a good question. I don't think Cornyn is an honest dude. I think the line of questioning he gave, and he's acting like big badass right now because he's trying to survive, not because he honestly is like been converted. And we're going to talk about what I think, even if it's not a 100% conversion, I think that he knows that's what he's respecting what the American public wants. And I'm talking about Rubio in that case. But in the case of Cornyn, no, I don't. I think Cornyn is too much of a rhino and a bushy. And if it looks like he's going to lose, he'll run. He's he strikes me as an Adam Kinzinger like dude. He really does. Like, will he stick it out for a while? Sure. But when he's like maybe, a month and a half, 2 months out from having to make that decision and being stuck with that decision, and his ass is getting crushed by 20 points, he's going to bounce. He's not going to lose his primary to Ken Paxton by 20 points. He's not. He's a sitting U.S. senator, an incumbent sitting U.S. senator who typically wins by healthy margins. He's not accustomed to this. I'm not sure he's built for it. I feel like Cornyn is part of a class of Republicans that are a lot like Democrats, and they don't believe the voter is even worthy of that respect. Like Adam Kinzinger. This is a piece of shit who was first elected pretending to be a Tea Party conservative, very clearly never was one. That's why I tell you, I'm always like skeptical, and I myself, I'm a veteran, but I'm always skeptical of veteran Republican candidates because I always feel like most of them will let you down because they are part of, it depends what their pedigree is. Like if they're like a Sean Parnell or they're like a Pete Hegseth, it's different. I mean, Pete's pedigree was not the same, even though he got Ivy League education. I mean, he's like, Minnesota working class. Like that's how he came. That's where he came from. All right. Now, a lot of people can betray their own class from the working class, but he did not. And he is not that guy. All right. So, Sean Parnell, he's from Western Pennsylvania, for crying out loud. I mean, and he was in the military. He wasn't a brass, like a member of the brass like that. He was a soldier. He was a soldier's leader. So and the respect he got from his men proved that. But or at least speak to that. I mean, not prove it. That's not the best way to say it. It speaks to that. And they don't forget where they came from. All right. So I think Cornyn, though, is like Adam Kinzinger in the sense that they're just full of shit. They have always been full of shit. And when they get there, they believe that they're making the right decisions, that we're too stupid to understand those decisions are the right and sound decisions. The way they see the world is the way they see the world, and we're all wrong. And that's it. And any opinion that differs from their point of view is ill-informed. Not that they themselves are blinded to something or they can't see something. Like Cornyn would probably in secret, tell his best friend that this is the way the world works and that's it. Like the voters, they're just meant to be convinced every 6 years. But you know what? I got money from these people and they're the ones who make the world go around and they see the world like I do. So I'm going to always vote in their best interest no matter what. Like that's it. Like that's what they all kind of believe. Cornyn, look, do I have to remind everybody of back and forth with Sean Davis about the Ukrainian war with John Cornyn on Twitter? Sean Davis, who is, of course, a writer for The Federalist, editor at The Federalist, who understands the appeal to Donald Trump, especially on issues like foreign policy. He understands better than most why the Trump voter supports Donald Trump through a lot, thick and thin, because almost nothing Donald Trump has ever done and said could ever come anywhere near committing such a cardinal sin like lying to the American public about why to get in a war in Iraq. Why it would be dumb to fight Russia over Ukraine. Why it was dumb to begin with to ever support Ukraine in this effort. And remember how he talked to Sean. If he thinks like that about Sean, what the hell does he think of you? You're nothing. You're a speck. You're insignificant. You mean nothing. You're meaningless. You're meaningless to them. They don't care. If they think that little of someone like Sean Davis, you don't even exist. You're in the void, man. You're in the void. Oblivion. That's where you exist in their mind. In the realm of oblivion. All right. Let's go back to my homegirl. Let's go, Pam.
Under what circumstances will you prosecute journalists for what they write?
I believe in the freedom of speech. Only if anyone commits a crime. It's pretty basic, Senator, with anything, with any victim. And this goes back to my entire career for 18 years as a prosecutor and then 8 years as Florida's Attorney General. You find the facts of the case. You apply the law in good faith, and you treat everyone fairly.
And it would not be appropriate for a prosecutor to start with a name and look for a crime. It's a prosecutor's job to start with a crime and look for a name, correct?
Senator, I think that is the whole problem with the weaponization that we have seen the last 4 years and what's been.
Let me just pause it right there. What is he doing? Who said it before? They're throwing her. This is like a layup. You would think this is coming from the Republican bench, the Republican side of the bench. Those are layups. And she is Pam Batty, man. She is. I'm not going to get in trouble with Laura. She's known her for years. I have a major crush on Pam. Yeah, I'm telling you, man. Pam, she knows what she's doing up there. And I feel like those are supposed to be Republican softballs. It is precisely what Democrats have been doing, what he just said. Starting with names and then looking for crimes. That's why people are calling them the Stasi. That's why their own intelligentsia, like Alan Dershowitz and Turley, these aren't Trump supporters. No matter how many times they go on Fox News or Sean Hannity or anywhere and like advocate against lawfare, it's not going to ever make them Trump supporters or conservatives, folks. They're not conservatives. Alan Dershowitz is a Harvard law professor. John Turley has been like, he's old school liberal. John, I don't know when you're going to learn. You are kind of conservative, brother. Like you are, bro. Like you sued over Area 51 and aliens. that makes you a conservative. Okay. If you don't believe, all right, if you don't believe that the government is allowed to keep secrets like that, welcome to the right, my friend. You can take your place right here right here. You belong on this side of me. Okay. But you know what I'm saying? That's been their argument for years now with the lawfare against Donald Trump. Since the Crossfire Hurricane case that they started with names. Oh, look, it's George Papadopoulos. It's a mark. Carter Page, a mark. That's what Brennan did with Carter Page. He plucked some dude out of his file cabinet who always wanted to be helpful to the CIA, had business dealings abroad, had connections, and routinely offered his services. I'm an American, and anything in this sector, I know there are dirty dealings going on. Anything you may need help from me to do, I'm there for you. That was Carter Page. They turned him into the complete opposite. But because they knew that he would always want to be helpful to them, he was a mark. He was a Boy Scout like mark. They said, oh, wow, what a great mark. Let's get a FISA warrant on him, especially since he's a connection to that world. We can draw a nexus to that world. And once we get that FISA warrant, we could do 3 degrees of separation and spy on everybody. And that's what they did. They started with names. In fact, that's what the FBI has been doing for years. What crime did Martin Luther King commit when they decided to spy on him and tape him? Even somebody more militant like Malcolm X. He didn't actually commit any crimes after he got out of jail I shouldn't say until, after he got out of jail. He didn't actually commit any crimes before they decided to start spying on him and looking for ways to deal with him, misusing the law and their power. And of course, they were climbing outside telephone poles. Like I say all the time, they were climbing up telephone poles outside Trump Tower, and he didn't do shit. Because this is what they do. This is what they have been caught doing. Even that little tiptoe dancing little Mary, Michael Horowitz, who pretends to be a straight shooter, even he in his report. They constantly violate the Woods procedures. They're starting with names, not with crimes, and they're going to town. This is something I would have expected a Republican senator to ask her so she could say what she said. In fact, Senator, this has been the problem the entire time with Democrats.
Happening to Donald Trump. They targeted Donald Trump. They went after him. Actually, starting back in 2016, they targeted his campaign. They have launched countless investigations against him.
Yes, ma'am.
That will not be the case if I am Attorney General. I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation. Justice will be administered even-handedly throughout this country. Senator, we've got to bring this country back together. We've got to move forward, or we're going to lose our country.
Yeah, I mean, you've already lost the trust. The entire department's lost the trust of the American public. If they don't see accountability, I mean, it's great that there'll be somebody who comes in with the attitude to be, to administer justice in a fair manner. That's all great and everything. And one standard, one size fits all. That's the way justice is supposed to be. That's all great and everything. But there has to be accountability. Otherwise, and they have to call it that, like she just did. And it just seems like that they're doing fine, because Democrats are so messed up. They're not able to, that's how they would normally spin it. Okay. And I'm not doing this to give them ideas. I'm simply telling you an example. They would spin this as, oh, now Trump is politicizing the Justice Department. And they wouldn't want it to be phrased as accountability or framed as accountability. And he just gave her such a layup right there. He not only, messed up, screwed up, and did not make an obstacle to her nomination. He opened the door. They're going to be able to point to that exchange when she indicts one of these scumbags. She's going to say, what are you talking about, Senator? I told you I was going to do this. This guy misused his power here. Remember, Senator, free and fair administration of justice. This guy abused his power. You know, it's funny. It's funny none of these people. You guys ever see, and I was making fun of ICE the other day, but in truth, there's some good stuff. You guys ever see the show Betraying the Badge? Right? Every time, and if you have, you know, but if you haven't, bear with me. These guys get time, man. There was, this was a repeat, but it was the example of Detective Knight and Baltimore police basically shaking down drug dealers and making them sell drugs for him, blah, blah, blah. He winds up getting indicted by the feds because one of the people they were shaking down calls the Federal Bureau of Investigation, calls the FBI, and got lucky and landed on a Boy Scout, all right, with a Boy Scout team. And they did good work. They were terrorizing the streets of Baltimore in the late 90s, and this is what they were doing. But again, it's the late 90s, different world. But it was not, though. Think about it. This is the era of Waco. This is the era of Ruby Ridge, and yet there was still a decent dude. He got lucky. Those guys got 100 years, all right? They had locked up rapists and murderers and drug dealers from gangs, and none of them, you know, would get time back then the way, because a lot of them didn't hit 3 strike yet, but they didn't get time the way that those detectives got time. And when asked about it, Rich, as the agent in charge of the investigation, he's like, they got to be held to a higher standard. They hold the authority, law enforcement authority. So when they abuse that authority, they have to be held to a higher standard. So because a lot of the cops that were friends with these guys, even though they themselves weren't corrupt, they were protesting it. They were like, that's a ridiculous amount of time. It's like, it ended up to be like 120 years or something, combined or something. And that was his explanation for it. And that's, not probably. I mean, that's how most people would agree with that. Now, let me put it that way. That's just how most people would think like that, and they would agree with that. So maybe there are more heinous crimes out there, but because you are trusted with this power, because you are trusted with this authority, you're not just being punished for the actual crime that you committed or the offense that you committed. You're being punished for the additional offense of threatening to, or in fact, destroying public trust in that authority. And that's why these people have to be punished, and punished severely. Because the only way to win trust back from the public, the only way they're ever going to be remotely satisfied and ever trust these institutions again, is if they, and I don't even want to say self-police, because obviously it's not being self-police, it's an outsider coming into police, is for them to be punished severely. Because right now, most Americans believe that there are 2 tiers, not even it. I mean, it's more than 2 tiers, and it's worse than 2 tiers. You either have justice or you don't. And most Americans feel the entire system is rigged. It's rigged against them. It's rigged in favor of these people. And people who have authority, they can do something wrong all they want, and they never get in trouble for it. This is why they don't trust these institutions, because there's never any accountability. The only ones who ever get the ass end of the system is them. And until that changes, or the perception of that changes, they'll never earn the trust back. So, Pam, you not only need to go in there doing, administering justice in a more fair and equitable way, you have to go in there and punish people that deserve to be punished. And we know who they are. All right. We cannot see them. I mean, it's even worse when you have like John Durham prosecute people that very clearly did something wrong in Crossfire Hurricane. He goes to the bottom of the barrel because he knows he's not going to get the prosecution. He's not going to get the convictions of the higher up people because that jurisdiction is just so crooked and so corrupt. He knows they're not going to get it. So they go through the low hanging fruit and still can't get the convictions. That makes it even worse. The headline that says, scumbag number one who misuses authority for the FISA court, not guilty, even though the evidence is overwhelming. Meanwhile, poor ass Martha Stewart has to go in chains. Mike Flynn serves the country for over 3 decades, has to give up the family house. And, come on, man. Come on. That stuff has got to change. And, by the way, a jurisdiction, you want to start somewhere, Republicans, you can start with just destroying and dismantling that jurisdiction. Oh, man, we're going to go over. Are you guys okay with that? We're going to go over. I'm sorry. I don't want to save. I mean, I guess I could, but I really don't want to save a few things for Friday. And I know I rambled a lot here. I need to take another real quick break. I'm going to do it very quickly. Then we're going to go to Rubio. And I do want to save that little bit about the Democratic donor. I can get through that pretty quick. I'm going to shut up. We're going to do a break real fast, but we are going to go about 5 minutes over at least. Is that cool? I hope so. Stay tuned. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. Subscribe. But of course, the best place to follow me is right there. People's Pundit. Whoop. Peoplespundit.locals.com. Peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. We'll be right back. 30 seconds. Give me 30 to 45. Let's go. If you've ever thought about protecting your wealth or maybe just diversifying your portfolio, the folks at Freedom Gold are definitely the people to talk to. Look, whether you open a new gold or silver IRA or you just take advantage of one of the other deals that we have there, you're going to get the service that everyone who's looking to diversify and looking to make a decision so consequential deserves. And that's what it really comes down to with what I love about the guys over there. This isn't a boiler room, no hard pressure. All right. They're going to make sure that you're confident in the decision that you make. All right. There's a lot of great deals. You can go to the website, freedomgoldusa.com/rich, and check them all out for yourself. But I just mentioned one, and I'll mention a few more. One is, of course, if you open a new gold or silver IRA, you will get $500 in free silver, which is incredible. All right. If you do sign up, they have lowered the entry commitment, which is unheard of. Everyone's usually like 50, maybe 20 grand, 10 grand. Even at Freedom Gold, it is a 5,000 minimum commitment. They lowered that all the way to $500 for you guys. And you'll be thrown into a prize pool. Somebody's going to win some free silver, which we have to get you guys that interview. And of the winners, there were 2 last month. We got to do it again. Thought we were going to do it Saturday. We didn't. But again, no matter what you do, you're going to get free shipping and insurance on every single order, which again is just unheard of. 888-279-3592. That's the number just for us. It's 888-888-279-3592. It's still as cool when you say, hey, the People's Pundit sent me. Or go to the website again, freedomgoldusa.com/rich, freedomgoldusa.com/rich. Also, by the way, strawberry lemonade is a huge hit for Field of Greens. They're not on the schedule today, but I did just want to point it out. It's a huge hit in this family. I still have some over here. Nobody wants anything else now. It is that good. So I like the lemon lime one. The link is in the description. Again, the promo code works. Strawberry lemonade is the bomb. So if you've bought it and you like the wild berry, I like the lemon lime. Most of the boys here like the lemon lime. Most of the girls like the berry. We all love the strawberry lemonade. It's phenomenal. It's out of this world. All right. Even my little one is cool with drinking fruits and veggies. 5 years old. 5. And he's like, ooh, it's slamming. The results are amazing. The link is in the description. All right. Let's play this thing from Rubio, who is known as a war hawk. Ran against Trump, of course, along with 17 others in 2015 and 16 for the nomination, the Republican nomination. Bitter backs and forth. But now they're cool and they're allies. However, Rubio is most certainly more of an interventionist than Donald Trump. Yet I want to tell you, I want to play it for you, and then I want to read something, and I want to tell you a little bit of a backstory here. All right. It's not even a backstory, it's just a little inside story, but it'll kind of not confirm it, but I can tell you I know some things behind closed doors that said and have been going on for a while that does make me believe that Rubio is telling the truth. All right. He's being sincere here, even if he doesn't necessarily agree 100% with the MAGA foreign policy. He's being sincere, especially when it comes to Ukraine. Here's this clip.
There's no doubt about it, but this war has to end. And I think it should be the official policy of the United States that we want to see it end. Now, what that master plan looks like is going to
Ukraine.
It's going to be hard work. This is not going to be an easy endeavor, but it's going to require bold diplomacy. And my hope is that they could begin with some ceasefire, and we're going to have in order to achieve objectives like the one that needs to occur in Ukraine, it is important for everyone to be realistic. There will have to be concessions made by the Russian Federation, but also by the Ukrainians, and the United States has lent itself there. It's also important that there be some balance.
Concessions by Ukraine and the United States, as well as Russia, in order to end the war, which he says has got to end. Whoa, that is a very, very, very different posture from the soon-to-be Secretary of State. He will be confirmed as the Secretary of State. Period. Full stop. And he is someone who advocated to be bullish against Russia. He's been a Russian hawk. He's been pro-NATO, of course. And I mean look, you can be pro-NATO and still be on the Trump side of NATO, be even on the John Mearsheimer side of NATO, and be pro-NATO. NATO is outdated. The Warsaw Pact has been dissolved. NATO was a balancing coalition against the Warsaw Pact. That is no longer in existence, and NATO should evolve into something else. Otherwise, it is just an aggressor coalition, which is what it stands for right now. I hate to tell everybody this. They don't like to hear it, but I rest assured, people, sure as shit, if Russia had a satellite state in Calgary or somewhere across from Niagara Falls, you'd be losing your mind. If in Tijuana, the Russians decided to send the FSB to mount a coup in that Mexican in that city, in that Mexican state, on the U.S. border, you would have a conniption. We are the aggressor here. We promised the Russians. We had an agreement. NATO would not take Ukraine. Ukraine would not be a satellite state of the West. They had a democratically elected government that was more favorable to Putin. We didn't like it, so we engaged in engineered a coup, which ended up with the government of, now, I mean, there was an election after that, of course, but now it ended up with this more pro-Western government that is now led by a coke-snorting cross-dresser former comedian. I mean, it is so unserious. They never had a snowball's chance in hell to beat Russia. They are losing. NATO is training troops and bleeding the country dry. This was a stupid war that could dangerously lead to escalation between two great powers who have the most nuclear warheads of any other nations in the world. Not to mention that the real threat is China, and when you balance against another nation's interests, you're going to push them into the arms of your enemy. They are in the same sphere of influence as China. We should not have this ongoing Russophobia that paralyzes our ability to do diplomacy with Russia. Russia should be more concerned with China than the United States. That would be the smart play. But of course, we're not smart. So Rubio himself has done a complete about face, and I'm telling you, and I just got the thing off, I want to read it, but I'm telling you, going back now nearly a year, in private briefings, Rubio, well, it wasn't, it was during the Republican nomination. Going back to that period, Rubio already started in private briefings to legitimately ask for ways to find an exit. Behind closed doors, things were being said by certain people that were not their posture in public, and Rubio was one of them. All right. So he could see that it would take a commitment the American public was not willing to have, and maybe he wasn't even willing, in order to defeat Russia. We would have to help Ukraine on a scale that is just unacceptable. So I can tell you that at least some of this is legitimate from Rubio. It is. And then I see this exchange with Breitbart, and I think it's worth noting. All right. So we can go through all of it, but this is his comments and his remarks. But I really do just want to go to the bottom paragraph, because the first three are very much textbook Rubio, textbook, hawk, Republican talk, right? And he goes on and he's, there were, well, actually, I mean, the second paragraph's kind of like him saying, you know what? Things were better under Trump. They were. He says, I'll read the whole thing real quick. Rubio will then argue that the United States faces, quote, a challenge similar to the immediate post-World War II timeframe, now in which the U.S. must, quote, confront the single greatest risk of geopolitical instability and generational global crisis in the lifetime of anyone alive here today. 8 decades later, we are called to create a free world out of chaos once again. This was and then he ended up saying this, of course, but it's not what you think. Like, this sounds like it's textbook Republican hawk stuff. But wait, listen. This will not be easy, and it will be impossible without a strong and confident America that engages in the world, putting our core national interest above all else once again. And you're like, ugh, here we go. But just 4 years ago, we saw the beginnings of what would look like. During President Trump's first term, America's strength was a deterrent to our adversaries and gave us leverage in diplomacy. Now we're starting to get more closer to Reagan and Trump, right? There were no new wars. Now we're getting much closer to Trump. ISIS was eviscerated. Soleimani was dead. The historic Abraham Accords were born, and Americans were safer as a result. Now, that is not textbook Republican traditionalism, whatever, Bushism, whatever you want to call it. That is not. That is Gipper and Trumper talk right there. Like, you don't actually have to do the killing, George. You don't actually have to. But they want to. That wing wants to. There's a difference. Rubio then will say that Trump returns to the White House with a, quote, unmistakable mandate from the voters, unquote, which is they want a, quote, strong America that is, again, engaged in the world, but guided by a clear objective to promote peace abroad and security and prosperity here at home. Neocons don't want to promote peace abroad. They don't. Neocons, by definition, want to use the primacy of U.S. power to shape the world in our image. Sure, some have used language of peace before, but that's not what that's not, one sentence later, they're discussing the deployment of a carrier group or the projection of U.S. power in some region or the other. And that is not what he's saying here. And then he goes on to acknowledge that Trump's vision is the voters' vision. And he basically says we have to respect that. Are you ready? That is the promise President Trump was elected to keep. And if I am confirmed, keeping that promise will be the core mission of the United States State Department. Tragically, horrifying atrocities and unimaginable human suffering can be found on virtually every continent. In other words, let's cut the shit. You can't stop it. It's a nasty world out there. And I'm certain that today I'll be asked about the array of programs and activities the Department of State carries out to address them. As a nation founded on the revolutionary truth that all men are created equal with rights that come not from man but from God, we will never be indifferent to the suffering of our fellow man. But ultimately, under President Trump, the top priority of the United States Department of State must be and will be the United States. That is a very, very different posture from the Marco Rubio that we have all known, right? This is a guy who loved Mitt Romney because Mitt Romney wanted to go everywhere and kill everybody. right? This is a guy who, himself, when he ran, called Donald Trump's America First policies ridiculous, right? So this is a guy who is acknowledging that, look, the last little endeavor that we all support, because let's cut it. Mitt Romney wanted a war in Eastern Europe, right? Remember, the 80s called. They want their foreign policy back. Obama was super pro-Putin, buddy. Translate that to Vladimir. Pulling missiles out of Eastern Europe and Turkey. It was them who wanted a war like the one that Democrats are supporting now in Ukraine. Not Barack Obama. He let his vice president sell American interests to Ukrainian oligarchs. Literally, Biden's family business profiting from American exploration and development of energy, but also the use of military power to keep control of it. You think they care about the human condition and the people of Ukraine? They don't give a shit. You think Hunter Biden was put on the board of Burisma to give a shit about that? They don't care about it. This is about getting control of the shale that they invested in Eastern Europe. And the oligarchs who pay for their campaigns were making a fortune over. Western Ukraine does nothing but take from the eastern side of Ukraine, which was where all the food and all the energy is at. The lights stay on and the bellies stay full because of eastern Ukraine. It's just true. Hard truth. Deal with it. Anyway, 208. Let me speed read through this because I think you really all need to understand. I don't expect them to not get their act together, but you have to all understand now the situation that Democrats are facing. Very, very, very angry Democratic donors and Democratic bundlers who don't even feel that they could do their job anymore in that party after what they did with Harris. Okay. Michelle Obama signals she's done with Trump. Why? Go away. She's done. You're all done. You haven't realized you're all done. Look at this live coverage. Bondi and Democrats clash. What the hell are you talking about? Bondi is like wiping the floor with them. That's just like Hegseth clashes with Democrats in hearing. Okay. The only thing anyone ever is going to care about is that Maggie Hiromo meme where, I mean, this is one of the stupidest people in Congress. Pete wiped the floor with her, and here we are. Now look at this. Ex-DNC member says she's now raising money for Trump. You may find her name familiar. I even brought her up. I didn't bring her up by name, but this is who I was talking about. An ex-Democratic National Committee official who helped finance President Biden and Vice President Harris campaign. Now she says she's fundraising for President-elect Trump. In an interview with the Daily Mail this week, Lindy Lee, a former DNC official who raised money for high-profile Democrats, said that she is turning her attention to Republicans, aligning with the MAGA figures she tried to beat as recently as November. Lee, in the interview, described the DNC as a cult and is now asking fellow donors to join her in the pro-Trump movement. My real friends are all supportive. But my political friends, it's just been really bad. It's a cult. The way that they've treated me is difficult, she said from the outlet. I'm not the only donor. I'm just the only one who is a public figure and willing to speak out. Everyone else is afraid for their own necks. Lee described the experience as, quote, painful and rewarding, unquote, following Harris's sweeping loss to Trump. She had spent much of the election appearing alongside prominent Democrats in support of the Biden-Harris ticket, and later the Harris-Walz effort when Biden announced he would not seek a second term. Well, let's put that into context. You mean when Biden was exposed as being a senile retard in front of everybody? And I don't mean that word. I mean it in its definition. Not in the name-calling sense, in its actual definition. Webster, biatches, Webster. Look it up. You mean the emperor has no clothes, he's a senile retard moment. That's what you mean. Which then, people that she needed to raise money from and who asked her tough questions pushed him out of the race and installed this woman. She emphasized Harris possibly ascending to become the first female president. During the cycle, Lee harshly condemned the now president-elect's most notable around his allegations of sexual assault and misconduct, painting him as unqualified to serve again in the Oval Office. But after Harris's loss, she quickly got in front of cable news audiences by criticizing the Democratic nominee and party structure led by Biden ally Jamie Harrison. Democrats, in turn, called out the Princeton graduate, who many saw as abruptly switching sides to gain political favor in Trump's Washington. Lee escalated her rhetoric against Democrats as they piled on, causing her to become further alienated from the party and in some cases receive ill will from top DNC brass, including Harrison. Less than a week out from Trump's January 20 inauguration, she said the experience has been better working with Republicans. They are much more human with me, Lee told the Daily Mail. They are so much more human with me. With the DNC, it was so mercenary. It felt that everyone had dollar signs in their eyes. They treated me like a wallet. It was just so disgusting and gross. I think people have had enough of the, Trump is really bad. We're going to pre-hate everything he does. I think it's dead. I don't know what else to say. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Don't forget, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be on with Parnell, Battleground Live at 5. My buddy's sitting behind. Pete, tell us how it was. He's going to explain his experience with us. And we're going to talk about why that was a bit of a watershed. And they're all in the backdrop of all this. They're in disarray. They cannot organize and figure out what the hell to do next. All right. And of course, locals, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. We're going to get a lot more between the numbers where I just pop on before dinner and berate everybody and vent. We're going to call them venting sessions, but also notable things. There's so much going on. Notable things. We will miss it if we don't do stuff like that in between Inside the Numbers episodes, which is why we're calling it Between the Numbers. All right. All right. What else? That's it, I guess. In the words of Olora, you want to come in and do it? I'll do it for you. Deuces. I'll see you at 5. Don't miss it. It's gonna be fun. A lot of fun. Oh, Public Polling Project. Link is in the description. Share far and wide. Contribute if you can. See you soon.